It looks like the Steelers are getting healthy just in time before their big showdown on Sunday Night Football against the Miami Dolphins. We'll talk about that, the concussion concerns for both starting quarterbacks, Kenny Pickett and Tua Tagovailoa, as well as what the offense for the Dolphins will look like with Tua back after he missed the last 3 games. Also, our scores and predictions right here on the North Shore Drive podcast. I'm Chris Carter with Brian Batko. We are the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Let's get into it. You are now listening to the North Shore Drive podcast, a show on all things Pittsburgh sports from the writers of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, hosted by Christopher Carter. And welcome to the Friday edition of the North Shore Drive podcast. I'm Chris Carter. He's Brian Batko, and this is the North Shore Drive podcast. We are here from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, breaking things down for you and your Pittsburgh Steelers exclusively today. Yes, the Penguins have played, and there's been talk about other stuff, but the Steelers, it's going to be a big showdown this Sunday night. Brian, when do you leave for Miami?
Yeah. What's up, Chris? I'm a shadowy figure here bringing you the information from the Steelers underworld. We've got a glare going on the back deck. So, I think I'm actually going to fly down to Miami on Sunday. I'm going to take my chances with the old airlines. Nothing ever goes wrong there, right? But little nugget, what's an 8:20 game, but a little nugget. I've done this before. 2018, Pitt played at Miami the day after Thanksgiving. I wanted to be at home with the family on or maybe it might have been 2 days after, but either way, I wanted to be home with family on the holiday weekend as much as possible. So I flew into Fort Lauderdale that day, covered the game that afternoon, and everything went just fine. Can I tempt fate to do it again this weekend? We shall see.
Indeed, that is a good question. This show is brought to you today by the Acrisure Fan Advantage, the power to project one of our Post-Gazette Steelers beat writers into your home or office using augmented reality. You can get an exclusive pregame breakdown from a Steelers expert standing right in your living room. Get the latest insights on stunning lineups, key matchups, and critical stats to post-gazette.com/Acrisure Fan Advantage. No apps or downloads, just insider access to Steelers updates at post-gazette.com/Acrisure Fan Advantage and get a real edge on this week's action. I did it this week, baby. So if you want to see you in your living room, go to that link.
And I'm next week. So
and you're up next week against the Eagles. Yeah. So yeah, good. Yeah, that's gonna be, but it is kind of fun to do those because like I was playing around, I was putting myself on Noah Heil's shoulder in the pit media room when we were waiting.
The devil or the angel on Noah's shoulder that day?
I was definitely the devil. I'm not a good person for Noah Heil's because I will encourage him to drink lots of alcohol. But anyways, let's get into the big stories for this game.
Yeah, I guess I should also say last time I was at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami when I covered Pitt, who was the Panthers quarterback that day? Kenny Pickett. But that game didn't go all that well for him and Pitt. They got sacked a lot. I think his stat line was decent, 12 for 24 for 160 yards as I go back underground here. But yeah, I mean, Pitt got smashed by the Hurricanes that day. They'll hope for better results Sunday night.
They will. The Steelers will hope for better results. I guess Pitt hopes too because
they're so much Saturday night at Louisville. I don't think it'll have any bearing on Steelers, Dolphins, and Kenny Pickett the next day.
No, it shouldn't. But being the Steelers, they have good news. I mean, they got practically everybody back in the Thursday practice, and we'll see on the Friday practice report what happens. But all 3 of the cornerbacks, Ahkello Witherspoon, Cam Sutton, Levi Wallace, full practice. Minkah Fitzpatrick, full practice. Larry Ogunjobi, full practice. Kenny Pickett's been in full practice. Pat Freiermuth's been in full practice. The one guy who I noticed was missing was Steven Sims, looking not good because he didn't practice on either day. And I believe there was one other person who was limited. I can't remember right now who they were, but all in all, like Miles Jack looks back and healthy. Yeah. It looks like this is going to be the healthiest version of the Steelers that we've seen in quite some time.
Yeah, I talked to Steven Sims after practice because, as you said, he's the only one who I think is really in doubt for this week. The guy you were thinking of was James Pierre, popped up on the injury report with a hip. But to go back to your point, probably don't need James Pierre on defense this week if all those other guys are good to go. Now, with Steven Sims, it'd be a shame for him if he can't play because he just finally got untracked last week against Tampa Bay with that 89-yard kickoff return, that 24-yard punt return. Mike Tomlin puts a lot of stock into winning the battle for field position. A good return man helps you do that. But Steven Sims was telling me he tweaked his hammy on that long kick return, which is impressive since he then had the punt return later, but just wasn't feeling quite right to him. He's going to try to do some stuff today, Friday. Maybe by the time you listen to this, we'll have more clarity. But those lower body injuries, especially for a player with that much speed, can be pretty tricky. So he didn't want to risk re-aggravating it and making it a 4 to 6 week or IR type of thing. He wants to make sure that he's good to go. So the Steelers might have to turn back to Gunnar Olszewski this weekend for one game, but we'll see what happens there. Steven Sims has been cursed a little bit. He also had that eye injury.
Yeah,
that forced him out of the early part of the Bills game when he was just catching passes from Kenny Pickett in warmups, and doink, right off the face he took one. And we know what that affected the Steelers on their first kick return in Buffalo.
That's crazy. He does seem like he's a bit cursed there, but who knows? I mean, if the curse can get you some 89-yard kick returns, that's not bad. We'll see if he's available. But I think the biggest thing that we noticed with the availability for both sides is the fact that Kenny Pickett and Tua Tagovailoa seem to be on track to play for this game. Now, Brian, you've been working on a story on concussions that will appear in the Post-Gazette this weekend, but it's interesting for both sides of this because you look at this and there have been people who've asked the question, why is Kenny coming back so quickly? Right. Especially when you look at the other side of this, when Tua Tagovailoa is now the poster child for coming back too quickly when the Dolphins were playing the Bills.
That's a good way to put it, Chris. Why did I not put that in my story? Maybe that can be the headline. I don't know. We'll leave that up to Ryan Wynn and the other editors.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll figure it out. They're great people, but I mean, Tua in that game, and here's the thing, because I want to establish there's a major difference from what's been going on here. Tua, in the middle of a game, took a hit, looked unconscious for a minute there as he tried to get up, stumble, and he admitted this week he did not remember everything that happened. He was unconscious at some point, and he came back into the game after a halftime assessment that he did, saying that he didn't have a concussion. They went on to win that game against the Bills, but he then got hit again the next week. The injury looked even more severe, and people are wondering, why is he back out there now? Kenny Pickett, different situation. Sunday against the Buccaneers, he takes a hit. He pops up. There's never a point where he stumbled, but the officials said, no, that looks like that could be a concussion. Go get looked at. He went to the blue tent, then went to the locker room, didn't return. Now, I think it's important to break down how the concussion protocols work in the NFL. You have the first stage, which is like the basic symptoms. Do you have does it look like you're experiencing the concussion systems? I'm not a neurologist, so I can't say I don't know all the things to say there, but there's a stage where it's like the basic level of concussion symptoms. Then if you pass that stage, and this is after the game, this is not during the game, this has to happen like in the week of recovery that Kenny Pickett's gone through. If you pass that stage, you can then go to the aerobic stage where you perform some athletic activity where you're tested again afterwards, and you're seeing, okay, has he passed that stage? Are his symptoms, lessening? Are they non-existent? Then they go to a simple football drill stage where they're by themselves, then a team non-contact drill stage. And it is my presumption that Kenny Pickett has been in that fourth stage all week long. He's not out of the concussion protocol yet, but if he continues to practice at a high level, I think it's a decent assumption to make that he will be able to play Sunday and be approved for full contact activity. Brian, this doesn't seem like the Steelers are rushing this at all, especially considering the whole NFL's on watch for this right now. But certainly there's reasonable concern for both quarterbacks, in what is always a physical game of football.
Yeah, I mean, I hesitate to put it this simply. I'm not going to use the term a minor concussion because I think we've figured out by now that there's no such thing. They're all significant, but it does seem like it's possible that given the back-to-back week, 4 days apart from Tua's initial hit against the Bills, which actually, if you watch them both, it was kind of similar to Kenny's. I mean, they both get pushed back, and the helmet hits off the turf or the grass at Acrisure Stadium, and yeah, I mean, it's just a difference in response, right? Kenny was a little slow to get up. Tua was visibly wobbling. So then the fact that Tua plays again 4 days later and takes an even worse sack by the Bengals defensive lineman, I think it's possible that Tua has had maybe the most severe concussion so far the NFL season. Yeah. Perhaps Kenny Pickett has had one of the least severe, which we hope that is the case for him. But, like you said, it sounds like he hasn't had any issue with, the written stuff, the baseline tests that every player does at the beginning of the season in case they sustain a head injury. So he's been sort of fast-tracked through this, but there's this revised protocol in the wake of the Tua news that if the spotters, the UNCs, the unaffiliated neurotrauma consultants see something from the booth that shows any gross motor instability, maybe they deemed that with Pickett just when he was shaking his head a little bit, getting the cobwebs out, as they used to say back in the old days. Maybe they just said, you're done for the day, no go. But from there, the evaluations were positive. And that's every expectation that I think the Steelers have. There's been no indication this week that they are on the fence at all and trying to get 2 quarterbacks ready. They've simply proceeded as if Pickett's going to be ready to go. And either way, whether you have some level of skepticism with that, or if you're fully trusting in all the experts, and Pittsburgh's one of the probably best places to be evaluated for a concussion with all the work that UPMC and those folks have done. So no matter what you think, it's kind of the epicenter of the concussion conversation right now in the NFL, and it sounds like both these guys are going to be out there.
It does sound like they're going to be out there, but what did the Dolphins look like when Tua's out there? Because when he was, people were talking about them like they might be one of the best teams in the NFL. Since he's been out, they have not looked good at all. Granted, they've also taken a lot of injuries to their quarterback position, but we're going to talk about Tua, what the Steelers need to do to counter him and that offense that has some of the most explosive receivers in the game. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But first, we got to talk to you guys about one of our great sponsors, and that's Liquid Death. Now, Liquid Death is this new Mountain Spring water brand that comes in a can. It's fresh. It looks like it's a beer, but it's not. It's a tall boy of just pure ice cold water when it comes out the fridge. I've been crushing these a lot. I'm only down to a couple left. Liquid Death, can you send me some more? Because these are awesome. And I'm telling you right now, if you get a Liquid Death, it's just water. Why do they call it Liquid Death? Well, it's here to murder your thirst. And every time I drink one of these, it murders my thirst. I don't feel like I need to drink pop. I don't need to drink nothing else. I'm just getting fresh water, and then there's no plastic residue in it. While it murders your thirst, it also is murdering plastic pollution on the planet, which means it's healthy for you and healthy for our world, because the cans more recyclable. Also, 10% of every profits from every can goes to fighting plastic pollution on our planet. So go get yourself some Liquid Death right now. I'm telling you, when you crack these open, you hear that sound. It sounds just like a beer, but it's just ice cold water, just fresh, and it tastes awesome. And you can get yourself some Liquid Death at your local Target, 7-Eleven, County Fair, wherever. You can also find a Liquid Death retailer near you with their store locator tool at liquiddeath.com/shore. That's liquiddeath.com/shore. Back here on the North Shore Drive podcast, I'm Chris Carter. He's Brian Batko. We're at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and let's talk more about this Dolphins offense, because Brian, when Tua was in there, they were tough to crack. They were a tough nut to crack. They were getting things going. They beat the Bills. They're the only team to have beaten the Bills. Granted, there was also the straining circumstances of the fact that the Bills wide receivers were like cramping up every play because Ken
Dorsey went berserk in the press box after. Yeah.
And that too, like there was so much going on about that game, but still, this offense with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, their top 2 wide receivers, has proven to be explosive. I did on my Acrisure Fan Advantage. I noted they account, just those 2 receivers, for 68% of the passing offense for the Dolphins. And that's not unnatural. That's not something that's crazy. It's just that when you have 2 talented receivers like that, they're going to get the football more, and they're going to be expected to do that. And with them, Tua Tagovailoa has the 5th most deep passing yards in the NFL. Now, what does that mean? It means when a ball travels 20 or more yards on a throw, how many yards do you have on passes that do that? And when I looked up on Pro Football Focus, it said he has 324 yards. That's 5th most in the NFL, and he's only played half the games this season, Brian. And I think, to me, I'm like, that's the sign that the Steelers have to be on their A game and taking away the deep ball and not allowing him to kind of extend plays the way that he does with his feet.
Yeah, I mean, they've really struggled these past few weeks with Teddy Bridgewater and then 7th-round rookie Skylar Thompson in there. So it tells you how well Tua was playing and how much he was just the critical piece of that offense until he got hurt. I mean, he's doing it all right now. You mentioned the deep yards, but he gets rid of the ball fairly quickly. He's great on play action. Mike Tomlin talked Tuesday about how good he is at turning his back to the defense, which is always the risk of play action. But then he has that mental picture of where his receivers are, and he's able to distribute the ball. So absolutely, they've become a team where, they've really zoned in on getting the ball to 2 guys for the most part, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Mike Gesicki's showing a pulse lately, the former Penn State tight end. So he's a matchup problem. It's going to be one of these games for the Steelers that, it's as simple as you want it to be. You've got to just bring these guys down. That's easier said than done when Tyreek Hill has you one-on-one in the open field, or Jalen Waddle is taking a screen pass or something like that. But you've got to tackle the catch as well as you did last week against the Bucs with a bunch of pretty much no-name guys in there. Now that you've got the Cam Suttons, potentially Akello Witherspoons, Levi Wallace's, Minka Fitzpatrick's back, it almost it's going to come down to execution, I think, more than anything. So this Dolphins team can absolutely hurt you, but they're also not running the ball all that effectively. The offensive line has some issues, and they're going through some injuries right now. So it's not like they are a picture of a juggernaut that people thought they were going to be after 3 weeks.
They're not this juggernaut that's unstoppable. And I do think that part of it also is they're going to have to get their chemistry back, because like you said, it's not like this offense is like the Chiefs or the Bills, where they've been working with the same kind of core players for the past 2 or 3 seasons. They're very much figuring out how this works with Tua. Tua and Waddle were there last year, but Tyreek Hill just got there, and there's still some sense of that. And now with Tua missing the last few weeks, and that's not to say that he won't be dangerous in this game, but I think the Steelers can devise a plan. It won't be similar in the sense that they have to find a way to contain him, because he's going to be more athletic than Tom Brady as far as keeping plays alive. But I think they're also going to have to win this game with four-man rushes up front, because they're going to need to invest game plans where they're putting 7 guys in coverage, because you're gonna have probably 2 guys on you're gonna have 2 guys. You have your 5 guys that are available for the Dolphins receivers. It's usually 2 receivers or 3 receivers or a tight end or running back, something along those lines.
They actually use a fullback too, believe it or not.
And they do
Mike
use
McDaniel
a fullback.
Comes from San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan and Kyle Juszczyk. They have this Alec Ingold guy. So yeah, they can line up and try to run the ball that way too.
They could do that, but the Steelers have to be accountable for all of those different formations. This is part of what Michael McDaniels, the head coach for the Dolphins, has brought to their offense, and that there's some new looks that look innovative, and they look interesting, and they've been productive early on in the year. But this is where Brian Flores comes in, and I think that this is where, like, I think this is a very interesting redemption game for him and for Minka Fitzpatrick, who's playing. This is the first time he's been back in Miami to play the Dolphins since the Steelers traded to get him off of the Miami roster.
The Dolphins in 2019, I believe, right?
He did. They were in Pittsburgh for that one.
Ryan Fitzpatrick arm punt.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that. That was a wild game. Did Devlin Hodges win that one, or was that a Mason Rudolph one?
That was a Mason game, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah,
I couldn't remember.
That was a night game.
It was a night game. I was there. I was there for it. I remember the crazy James Washington touchdown, or was it James Washington blocking for somebody?
No, well, I'm not. I think it might have been Washington. The Dolphins basically did a 0 blitz, and Steelers were just like, "Oh, well, thank you." And
thank you. It was Deontay Johnson, and then James Washington blocked for him.
There you go.
Going into the end zone. That's what it was. But still, like, that was a crazy moment. But this is kind of a redemption moment for both of these guys against an offense that, it has looks explosive a lot. A lot of people have alleged, like, oh, they're much better, and they look more talented on the offensive side of the ball. The defensive side of the ball is struggling for the Dolphins, but I think it's going to be very intriguing. You're going to need to probably double Tyreek Hill a lot, double Jalen Waddle a lot, and that's going to put pressure on guys like Miles Jack, Terrell Edmonds, probably whoever's in the slot, whether that's Cam Sutton or Arthur Mollett, Devin Bush, all those guys to win their one-on-one battles with the Mike Gesicki's, with the slot receivers, and all the other options that are going to come in to the Dolphins offense, so that the other guys can take away the top 2 options.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's another big game for Terrell Edmonds. I mean, he needs to show that he can be a reliable player on the back end the way he's been the past couple weeks. He had some struggles earlier this season against the Browns. So the Dolphins are going to try to put you in those difficult matchups. You're right. I mean, winning up front makes every secondary look better. The Steelers weren't doing that enough when TJ Watt first went out. They were able to find more success with that last week against Tampa Bay. Cam Hayward and Larry Ogunjobi were just chucking guys to the ground. I think the Dolphins' interior is also pretty suspect. And as far as their tackles go, at the time of us talking, we don't know if Teron Armstead, their big ticket free agent edition, is going to be back at left tackle. He missed last week. Austin Jackson, probably not going to be back yet at right tackle, a former first-round pick out of USC. So
the guy that they got with the pick that they got from the Steelers trade to get Minka Fitzpatrick.
Yes, so he was 19th overall. But this is another week that Alex Highsmith got a win on the edge. DeMarvin Leal kind of been a little bit of a guy for you, Chris. He's not walking through that door. He's on IR. So Malik Reed is going to need to do more. But I mean, whether it's interior pressure or whether it's getting around the edge and, getting home to Tua, that'll allow those plays to not develop as quickly on the back end. And whether it's, the players who are returning from injury for the Steelers or some of the guys who had to step in last week, their jobs will be easier if they can get all that pressure up front.
I agree. And one thing you talked about, interior pressure, I do think that there's a good chance that we see more of that. I thought the game against the Buccaneers was the best we saw Cam Hayward and Larry Ogunjobi work as a duo, and it looks like they'll both be available for this game again. And last week against the Buccaneers, they keyed it. There was a really good scheming to get them matched up with Luke Gadecki, who was the left guard for the Buccaneers, who was the very obvious weak link of that offense.
They've played like 3 or 4 rookie left guards already this year. I mean, that's like Cam Hayward's dream right there.
Exactly. And they're picking on it. And now they get Liam Eichenberg, who I was talking to Kyle Krabs of the Draft Network, and he also hosts Locked On Dolphins. But he was telling me, he's like, Chris, if the Steelers key up, what they did last week to the Buccaneers and key it through Liam Eichenberg, it's going to be a rough day for Tua Tagovailoa. So I think that Brian Flores, Mike Tomlin, Terrell Austin, they see that kind of stuff. And Carl Dumbo, they're going to see that kind of stuff. They're going to try to get those opportunities. And if they're getting that interior pressure, if they're able to win with 4 up front, it's going to make it tougher for Tua to make things happen, through the air. Because again, I pointed this out in the Acrisure Fan Advantage. Go check that out, by the way. But when you look at what Tua has thrown 3 picks, each of his 3 picks, Brian, were when he was trying a deep ball to Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle, and they were bracketed, and he thought, I can fit that ball in there, and then he couldn't. That's what the Steelers have to do, bracket those guys. And it doesn't always have to be Minkah Fitzpatrick and a cornerback. Sometimes it can be a cornerback playing deep and a linebacker coming underneath to help. And sometimes it can be Terrell Edmonds in a corner. But there has to be 2 guys around those guys to force it. Hey, you're not going to get it. Or if it's a quick pass, that's a different story. If it's a quick slant or like a pass to the flat, just get those guys down. But on those, when they're running the deeper routes, they're starting to go 10, 15, 20 yards downfield. Get 2 guys around them, whether one underneath them, one over top of them, so that Tua has to keep fitting it in the passing windows. If you do that all game, Tua's going to hit some of them. There's no doubt about that. But you put pressure on his arm that is not the strongest to fit them in areas where you're going to have Minkah Fitzpatrick, and he's going to have the chance to make plays in the football. I think it's a huge part of this game. We'll get to our predictions in just a minute here on the North Shore Drive podcast, so don't go anywhere. But first, we got to talk to you guys about Yinzers in the Berg. Yinzers, listen up. With the Steelers campaign off and running, you got the Penguins back full, all full strength going. Yevgeny Malkin, Sidney Crosby, Chris Letang, all those guys, they're scoring goals. Jake Gensel was going off the other night. It's awesome. So go support your black and gold, whether it's Steelers, Penguins, Pirates, whatever, at Yinzers in the Berg, the ultimate place to go for Pittsburgh sports apparel. And it's easy. They've got 2 legendary shops in the Strip District that you can go to at any point in time during the week. But if you're not in Pittsburgh, if you're out and about, Steeler Nation, it travels very well. It's all over the country. It's all over the globe. So if you can't get to Pittsburgh, to the Strip District, go to their online store, Yinzers in the Berg, at yinzerspgh.com. And that's yinzerspgh.com to get all your Pittsburgh sports apparel, accessories, and much, much more. Go check them out in the Strip District, or check them out online. Again, yinzerspgh.com for all your best Pittsburgh sports apparel. Back here on the North Shore Drive podcast, I'm Chris Carter. He's Brian Batko. It's time to look at this game critically now. It's time to break down what we think is going to happen and all that. Brian, this is a very important game for both teams. The Steelers are 2-4. They have a chance. If they win this game, they're 3-4, facing the undefeated Eagles, who will be coming off a bye week in Philadelphia, where the Steelers have not won since like 1968 or something. That to me is like an automatic loss, just because the Eagles are playing well. They'll be coming off a bye. They'll be fresh, and the Steelers, and maybe the Steelers pull that out. I mean, who knows?
Weren't we saying the Bucs were an automatic loss, Chris?
Listen, I didn't say that. I actually thought that they could take them. But
even after the injury report came out last Friday?
I said it was going to be tough, but man, I was thinking that they could hang in there. But the Eagles are playing really good football, and they're going to be rested. But again, you're right. Any given Sunday, and the Steelers have proven more than anybody. Well, not more than anybody, but as much as anybody.
Yeah, but Buffalo was like, not this Sunday.
Yeah. Buffalo was like, get out of here. You got us last year with that. We're not letting you do that a second time. But still, the Steelers could pull it out. But even if they don't, if they can win this game, And even if they lose it, they'll head into the break 3-5, which, considering where they were at 1-4, I think would be, anyone would have taken that. And it's looking like, just based off of what we're seeing from TJ Watt posting on Instagram, from DeMonte KZ coming back to practice, they could be their healthiest version of themselves after the bye. And that's when their schedule lightens up. Like we talked about this gauntlet, and right now they're 1-1 through the gauntlet, Brian. And if they win this game, they're 2-1 going through the gauntlet. And at the same time, though, the Dolphins, they can't afford, to me, I think they can't afford to lose this game, because not that they can't afford, but it's going to put them in a bind. They'll go from 3-0 to 3-4, and they need to step up. The Steelers, I think, are one of the games that they look on their schedule and like, hey, this is a team that we should be. We've invested. We're further along in our rebuild process than they are. I think that's
they're at home. They're honoring their 1972 undefeated team, so they've got some.
They do that every year. No, that's not special.
Anniversary though, Chris.
Oh, come on! It's always they honored the 49th anniversary last year. Those guys are just like the 70 Steelers. They're trotted out every year just to wave and smile and get their thing. Yes, but yes, it is the 50th year anniversary of that.
Got the vibes on their side, and they're facing the team they beat in the AFC Championship game all the way back then.
Yeah. They did off a fake punt. Don't trust me. My dad doesn't remind me of that all every month at some point. He was like, if they had just, and I'm like, Pops, you were 9 when
they won happened. They won 4 Super Bowls after that, man. Let it go 6, if you count the latest ones. Yeah,
exactly. But let's talk specifically about this game. What's the biggest matchup that you see that works in the favor of who you think's going to win this game? Where's the turning point coming? What's your final score here?
So I think it's, as we kind of talked about the last segment, Steelers D-line against Dolphins O-line. You look at the through line of the games that they win when you feel like they shouldn't win, and it's just been bully ball up front, dominating the line of scrimmage. Cam Hayward, just being the beast that he is. Good things tend to happen. So I just look at this Dolphins O-line. I feel like they're not pass blocking very well. Our quarterbacks keep getting hurt every single week. They're not run blocking all that well, although Mike McDaniel's kind of looked at as an evil genius who can scheme up stuff in the run game no matter your personnel. They made a star out of Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson and Elijah Mitchell in San Francisco while he was there. Now the lighting decides to work out as we come into the final 5 minutes of the show. But so I think that's a pronounced advantage for the Steelers. I feel like every week on this show, I feel like the Steelers offense is taking some baby steps, and maybe they are. A little bit of progress here and there. They were able to not just start a game with a touchdown on their opening drive last week, but even close out a game with a 4-minute drill that, put it away against Tampa. So good things there from actually both quarterbacks too, although you don't expect to see both of them this week. You hope not, or else something went wrong. But I think there's going to be some rust for Tua, certainly. And I do think the Steelers have some schematic advantages, and the fact that they're getting healthy is nice. Minka Fitzpatrick wasn't playing his best football before he went out with that knee injury, but you got to think that after having that week to rest and recover, he'll be back to 100%. So you always feel good about having him on the back end. I think either he or Terrell Edmonds gets a pick in this game. I'm going to go Steelers 21, Dolphins 18 with a win on the road to get 2 in a row.
That would be crazy to get 2 in a row, but I'm kind of with you. I think the Steelers offense can make enough plays in this game to do what they normally do. I don't think they step outside of their shell as much. Like, this won't be a game where Kenny Pickett throws 4 touchdowns and lights it up.
Manage it. Yeah, he'll manage the game and do just enough. Maybe they get Najee Harris on track a little, although we should mention that Dolphins defense. I mean, they do have some horses up front. Christian Wilkins, Zach Seiler, they can mess with you a little bit. Ingram. Kenny Pickett faced Christian Wilkins in college in the ACC championship game, and that did not go very well for the Panthers.
That did not go very well for Kenny Pickett.
Who was that other big joker they had? Dexter Lawrence.
Yeah, that guy was huge.
Oh my, that Clemson D-line was just on another level.
They ate people.
We don't have to revisit that very sad, dreary night for Pitt fans. But yeah, the Dolphins super banged up on the back end. I mean, even Xavier Howard hasn't been Xavier Howard so far this year, and they just lost a couple other corners to injured reserve. So they're going to be running out some guys who look a little bit like the Steelers cornerback core last week.
Yeah, and I think that's an opportunity for the Steelers to just, again, not run up the score or anything like that, but put up the points that you kind of expected from them to do. I think they can get 2 touchdowns, some field goals. And I think the biggest thing is, can the defense get them the turnovers to set up those short fields? If they do, I like their chances in this game. And I think that they will. I think that, like you said, that offensive line from the Dolphins, I don't think that they're going to be able to hold up the entire game. I think that Tua, he's young. I think that there's a lot of things that he has to consider in this game. He's got to be protecting himself. And I guarantee you that the Dolphins are very concerned about that. And if he's getting hit, there's going to be a lot of concerns about that. And if he goes down, I think the Dolphins are going to be in a major sense of disarray. And with the pressure, I wonder, can Tua get off the deep ball that he wants to let go as much as he does for this team? If he does, good for him. But if he doesn't, it's because the Steelers are getting after him. I think that the Steelers pass rush gets home a few times, more than a few times. I think Alex Highsmith continues to lead the NFL in sacks after this week. Cam Hayward, Larry Ogunjobi. I even think Malik Reed, he won't get up sack, but he'll be involved in some of those pressures. And that'll cause things, good for them up front. And then I think on the back end, you get 2 picks in this game. You said Terrell Evans. I think Minkah Fitzpatrick gets one that's like a major one that kind of puts a big advantage for the Steelers, especially late in this game. I'd say third or fourth quarter, it's the pick that kind of gives the Steelers the lead and allows them to play with a lead in the fourth quarter. And I don't anticipate them. What'd you say?
Just another pick 6 for Minkah, or just a pick?
I think it's a pick that's returned close. It's almost a pick
like
6.
His Jets
yes.
Near pick 6.
Like one where he'll get tackled like at the 10 and it'll set up a short field. I think you see something like that for him in this game.
We'll save his next pick 6 for when they face Andy Dalton and the Saints in a few weeks.
He'll get 3 of them. He'll get 3 of them just all by himself. They're coming. But in all seriousness, I do think that there's advantages to the Steelers this week. I think that the other thing that we've seen, Brian, that I think that people need to account for is that this defense is not – they're not gassed right now. They're coming off of the offense has been doing much better with the time of possession battle the last few games, and that's allowed them to play more, the defense to play more aggressive. After the win last week, I talked to Larry Ogunjobi, Alex Highsmith, a bunch of guys on defense, and they're like, yeah, the offense deserves a lot of credit for our success too, because they're helping us stay rested, and we get to sit on the sideline. We don't have to be out there every time, and I think that's a big part of what they want to do on defense, is have fresh legs, fresh minds, and not give the quarterback as many times to see all the different disguises they're putting together. I think, like you, the Steelers win. I'm going to make it closer, though. I'm going to say 24-23. It's going to be an awkward score, but I think the Steelers hold on. They get a lead. The Dolphins try to get it back. They'll go for like 2, and they'll fail, and then that would allow the Steelers to hold on to this one. There you have it. Both of us picking the Steelers over the Dolphins.
Also, it's not really the most intellectual thing to pick a game based on vibes or hunches or gut feelings, but I feel like they're not going to lose this game for Brian Flores. I mean, that is, he doesn't feel like
there's a bit of personal stuff here. Yeah,
he doesn't want to be the story this week. He politely declined interview requests with us in the local media this week to talk about it. But every player I've spoken to about him says we've been kind of jokingly messing with him, like you're going back down to Miami for revenge. And I think that there is a real chip on the shoulder kind of storyline with that. He knows a lot of these. He drafted a lot of these guys for Miami. So he does kind of know the ins and outs, their strengths and weaknesses. Mike Tomlin downplayed that aspect of it on Tuesday, but we know these coaches look for any little edge they can get in any matchup. So I feel like they're not going to let Flores lose this game, a guy that they've already come to know and love in that Steelers locker room. And another little nugget for you, Chris, maybe for some fantasy guys out there. Deontay Johnson, 4 career games in the NFL playing in a domed stadium or a retractable roof stadium, averages more than 10 yards. Averages more than 10 catches, 78 yards, and has 2 touchdowns in those games. Also, only one other time has he played in his home state of Florida, Jacksonville Jaguars, a couple years ago. Career high 12 catches for 111 yards. So Deontay Johnson likes playing indoors. He likes playing in the Sunshine State. Maybe he gets going this week. That originally appeared in my Skinny Post newsletter that goes out every Thursday. So make sure you sign up for that on the Post-Gazette website if you haven't already.
Indeed, do check out the Skinny Post newsletter, and do check out everything we got at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. All right, we have our team that will be down there in Miami, or I guess what is it, Coral Gables or something like that.
Miami Gardens is where Hard Rock Stadium is. I think we are all flying and staying in Fort Lauderdale, which is right there. So I will not be down on South Beach cruising Biscayne, Chris, unless things get really wild after the game.
As you know, the Post-Gazette reporters, we party hard. That's what we're known for.
I mean, I might try to hit up Future and see what he's up to, but failing that, probably just go back to my hotel and go to sleep.
There you go. Well, check it out either way. We got a lot of great content coming your way this weekend. Also, be on the lookout for everything here with the Friday injury report. Just making sure there's no setbacks for the Steelers offense or defense.
Like DeMarvin Leal last week, that came out of nowhere. So
that one came out of nowhere. But hey, there's going to be a lot to talk about with this game going forward into that. We also have Pitt Louisville, where Noah Hiles will be down there covering that game. I'll be here.
7th bourbon already, even though we're recording this at 10:08 Friday morning.
Listen, man, they're doing bourbon. I'm doing liquid death over here, baby. I'm keeping my health up. Also, Pitt basketball's got their first exhibition game of the season. I'll be covering that at the Pete. So lots of sports this weekend, baby.
Clarion Golden Eagles.
The Clarion Golden Eagles.
Shaler Titans alumnus, Mekhi Reynolds plays for Clarion. So keep an eye out for him, Chris.
I'll be sure to do that.
He's gonna get buckets. You watch.
He gets buckets. There we go.
I play pickup with him in the summer, so that's my guy. Shout out to Mekhi. I hope he lights it up at the Pete.
That will be fun to watch. We'll see how that plays out at the Pete. But again, Pitt basketball, Pitt football, some Penguins, some Steelers, all of that happening this weekend. Stay tuned with us at the Post-Gazette. We've got all of that here. Thanks again for checking out the North Shore Drive podcast. I'm Chris Carter. He's Brian Batko. Find us at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette at post-gazette.com. We'll be back on Monday with Ray Fittipaldo recapping what happened with Steelers Dolphins on Sunday Night Football. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you're watching this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. For 6 months of digital access to post-gazette.com for just $6, click the link down below in the description.